What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 64 to the show we go. We got Chris Henrique and myself, Andrew Parker. It's the Jake Faria episode. If you don't know who that is, he spent some time with the Red Sox, Blue Sox last year. Obviously been around the league for a little bit. Obviously had some time with Tampa a few years back. And, you know, he's probably one of the guys that me and Chris probably talked to the most this past year. I know there's some other guys, obviously, like Shug and Broadway and and Nick Sogard. Obviously, the locker room was pretty good. But, Jake, we have not gotten to speak to you in a while since being released over during the season. But I wanted to ask you, you left the Blue Sox, you go into free agency. I guess what was the process like, and I guess how have things been since you left the Red Sox?
So I got let go, and the difference for me this year, the difference between getting let go this last season and getting let go the previous season was the previous season I wasn't throwing well, and I wasn't anywhere near where I wanted to be, like physically. Like I wasn't throwing well, and I was like throwing in a way that I didn't want to throw, right? Like throwing pitches I didn't want to throw, throwing pitches in a certain situation that I didn't like. It just wasn't. It didn't work. It didn't go well. This year, I got let go. I was physically, I felt great. And I feel like I was like, if I kept going in the way that I was going, my season would have, turned around. It would have ended up pretty well. Like everything was working the way I wanted it to. I felt really good. So getting released this year was like, hey, last year or 2022 when I got released, I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to hit a reset button. I'm going to get back to my old way. And then I'll start reaching out to teams and hey, here's some numbers, whatever. This year it was got released, and it was immediately my agent was like, don't go anywhere. Don't leave Worcester. He had teams that were hey, because it was right around the trade deadline. So he had teams that the Blue Jays were one. They were hey, there's a chance. We're in the market for some stuff. If these things happen, we're gonna need arms. We'll bring Jake on. So and then obviously Buffalo's really close by. So he's don't go to Vegas and then have to fly back to Buffalo. Those moves didn't work out, so that didn't happen. But he was still talking to teams, and every team that we talked to was we'd love to bring him on. We need arms. His stuff looks way better than it did last year. We just don't have the room. The trade deadline's over. We don't have the space for him. So unless we get rid of somebody or something, we just don't have the space for him. Now, because I think baseball, the cap on players it's 180 something guys in the organization. Whereas when I first got drafted, the Rays had 300 dudes in the minor league. We had 7 teams in the U.S. You could have as many guys as you wanted on the DL. It was the Wild West. So you could bring on as many people as you wanted. Now it's not so easy. So the teams are we don't have the space. So I stayed ready. I came home. I was throwing bullpens. I was still 94, 95. Everything looked fantastic. And then once September hit, when you get into September, teams just stop. They pretty much, unless you're have recent big league experience, within the last month or so, week to a month, they just stop signing people. Because if you're not in the organization in September, you're not eligible for the postseason. So teams just they hit a pause button on signing guys. So as soon as September hit, I shut it down. I gave myself a break for about 2 weeks, and then I got back going. I started throwing again. I stayed ready until about September 1st, that first week, and then I shut it down.
And so now that the official off season, obviously, so after that period of obviously, they're not adding guys anymore. But then when you get to the point of teams obviously free agency period starts, was it? I guess how was the activity? I know that the market's a little slower. Obviously, there's a lot of guys that are still left unsigned. I keep checking, and I think it was only 50% of the guys were signed as of 2 weeks ago or whatever. So what has it been like, I guess, now that the official free agency is here?
It was slow in the beginning just because so how minor league free agency works is it's kind of the opposite of big league free agency. Like obviously like Shohei is like the unicorn, like he was going to sign before anybody, right? But what happens is big league free agency, you have a lot of like smaller free agents that sign early, right? The guys that are getting 1 to 5 million, like they're the smaller 1-year deals, right? They sign pretty early. The big time free agents typically sign a little later, right? Their contracts are more extensive, all that. Minor league free agency is the opposite. Their big time minor league free agents sign super early. So like you have tiers of minor league free agency. You have like your tier 1 guys are going to be the guys that sign within the first month of minor league free agency. Then you have your tier 2 guys and your tier 3 guys who are kind of like the tier 2 are the fillers, and then the tier 3 are like, okay, we didn't get our filler, we're going to go and get the next guy, right? The first couple of years that I was a minor league free agent, I was a tier 1 guy. I was still a recent big league experience team. Like I was still throwing throwing pretty well. So I signed super early. Like I signed with the Angels like the first month or month and a half of minor league free agency, right? The Twins took a little bit longer because of the lockout, but like I still signed relatively early. Now I'm kind of in like the next tier of like, okay, they're going to go out and get their guys, and then whatever room is left and they need somebody to fill in and see how they shake out, I'm that guy. So that's where I'm at right now. And like you said, there's a ton of bigger free agents that still haven't signed. There's a ton of like tier 1 minor league free agents that haven't signed yet either. So it's just taking a little longer. And the other thing too is last year when I signed with Boston, I signed after a pro day. I went through in front of all the teams. I signed with the Red Sox 2 weeks later. So I think a lot of teams were in the same thing of this year was like, we want to see him throw in a pro day, see how he looks, and then we'll go from there. So that's what it was. It was like a couple teams were like, hey, we're going to go see him in January in North Carolina. Because I throw at Tread Athletics in North Carolina. So they're like, we're going to go see him at Tread, and we'll go from there. So that was about a month ago, and I've talked to a few teams since then. So some things are picking up, but it's still just the nature of free agency this year is just really, really slow.
Do you get the sense though that free agency is really gonna start to change though? Because like to your point, you were kind of breaking down the tiers and how it's working for minor league players. It almost seems like if you're either not a superstar or to your point, that $1 to $5 million a year player, everybody else it's like a big time dogfight now to secure a job.
Yeah.
So that's what it looks like from like our perspective. I just was curious if that's what it maybe feels like now.
Yeah, I think if you look back 5, 6, 7 years ago, that's when it kind of started to shift a little bit where you'd have like, I remember 2017, I played with Tommy Hunter, right? And he was a minor league free agent, made the team out of spring training, had an amazing season, and then signed a 2-year, like $18 million deal, right? You don't really have those guys that are signing, like they're veterans that are signing the multi-year 10 to, $8 to $10 million a year deal. It's like you don't have those mid-range free agents anymore. It's either like the really quality free agent that we can get for a year or two that's going to make $3 or $4 million a year, or you're going out and you're getting Josh Hader for $20 million a year. Like it's the guys in the middle, their job is being done by committee, right? Hey, we're going to get this rookie to come in and do the job well for a month. And then as soon as he starts to struggle, we'll bring up another guy to do the job for the next month. And it's like coming up with Tampa, that was normal to me because that's just like we were a smaller market. We had to piece things together, and they've been successful doing it that way. So I think a lot of other teams are just kind of following suit and just saying like, hey, there's certain jobs that can't get done by this guy, right? Like younger guys just can't, we're not going to entrust this job to them. We're going to get an older free agent that can go out and, get this done. And then the stuff in the middle will fill in with the young guys.
Yeah. It's definitely because you see, like, for example, like for us, with covering like the Sox and things like that, they make a lot of these wide range moves, a lot of, versatile infielders, and you get, fan, blowback of why do they need another catcher? Why do they need another? But it's to your point.
Right.
There are some guys that are going to be probably part of the equation 6 weeks. That kind of caps off. You got on to the next, and it's just kind of how the rosters are being built. It's definitely, for like me, like I kind of stay super in tune to like the roster constructions and of how teams do it. And it seems like a lot of people are trying to copy that race format or even like the Dodgers piece, but it's starting to, it's from like just take away from like covering the team, like from a fan side of it, to see guys like we're at right now, a guy like Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell are still unsigned. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're literally less than 3-4 days from when dudes are going to start reporting. And to me, that's crazy. Like, how do you, you're going to get a job, but like you went all off season. I'm sure there's various reasons as to why that is remaining the way that it is.
Right.
It's crazy just how it shifted so much in the last 5 years.
Yeah. It's nuts. I mean, I just remember like being with Tampa, like when Blake won his first Cy Young, and it was like, he came into spring training the next year, and pretty quickly, it was like 3 weeks. It was like the Rays like threw money at threw a huge, that big extension. It was like 5 years, 50 million or something like that. Right. Where it was like, that was extremely, the Cy Young is what pushed it over the edge, right? It's what got him paid. Whereas like this year, it seems to be like, okay, like a lot of what I see is like, yeah, he's got 2 Cy Youngs, but everybody's saying like there's underlying things that like keep people from pulling the trigger. And it's like, to me, like underlying stuff doesn't matter when you go out and you put up a 200, he had 180 or something. I don't know how many innings he had this year, but like you have a 2 ERA, like underlying stuff doesn't matter when you're going out and you're getting the job done at the end of the day. Like, I don't know. It's just I don't know. The free agency is just crazy right now. The way that they're handling everybody. I mean, there's a ton of big market guys that are, Liam Hendricks is unsigned. Like, I think he's a free agent still, isn't he? Like, one of the best closers one of the best relief pitchers the last, 5+ years. He's, there's no reason why he should be a free agent, but just the way that it's working right now is it's just weird.
Yeah, 180 innings on the dot for him, and led the league with the least amount of walks at 99. Just
so
2.25 ERA, 14-9. I know people are like, wins. You guys look at wins still. I know, like, it's still a thing. It's not like, whatever, but still, 2-time Cy Young Award winner doesn't have a job yet. I just think it's nuts.
Right. It's just it's weird. And it was just one of those years where he was really, really good. And like you said, some people still look at wins. Okay, yeah, 2020 or 2018 when he won, he had 20 wins, but we were in Tampa. We won 90 games that year. So it's just some things don't really they're not a huge part of the equation. He still won double-digit games. Like, he still had a good season. So I don't know. It's just crazy how things are shaking out right now.
I want to kick it back to you and I guess the 2023 year. I just took a peek at this, and your usage was like all over the place. I think you started off as a reliever, and then they had you start some games. They stretched you out a little bit, start some games. Then you went back to the bullpen. Then you went back to starter, and then you got called up. Then you went back to the bullpen once you got back to Worcester. It's like, did that how was that? Did it affect you at all? Like, just having to do stretch out, then have to go back to the bullpen type thing. Like, did that affect you at all?
So that's such a good question, because that's part of the reason why the last couple of years have gone the way that they've gone, is because coming up with Tampa, I was a starter. 99% of my career at the Rays, I was a starter. Really early in my career, I got hurt. I had a minor thing, so they put me in the pen just to limit my innings. And then when I got to the big leagues, a little bit of time in the pen. But I'd always tell myself, I'm a starter. I want to be a starter. I want to do this. Well, then I get moved to the pen, and 2019, I get moved to the pen. I start throwing really well out of the pen in Durham. I had a month in Durham. I think I gave up 1 run. I struck out 30 dudes in a month. Like I was leading the team in Durham in strikeouts out of the pen. Like it was nuts. The minute I have a bad game, it's like I can't do this. I don't like going out of the pen. It's like a month of great games. The minute I have a tough outing, I'm like, I want to be a starter again. I can't do this, right? But then I go to being a starter. I have four great innings, and then the fifth inning comes, and it's like, okay, I give up a couple runs. My outing's over. And I'm like, I like being in the pen because I can go 2 innings in my days. Like, it's almost like I put up a block of like going out there and being really good out of the like at either one, because I'm like, just when it comes down to it, is like making up an excuse of like, this is why I didn't throw well. So this year, that messed with me a lot because like my big thing coming into spring training was like, I'm just happy to have a job, really grateful to have an opportunity. And the minute that I started, like, it was like my second or third game of the year in Worcester that I had a tough outing out of the pen, I told myself, like, I'm not a reliever. Like, I can't do, like, it went away from being like, I'm grateful for the opportunity to go out there and work hard and take advantage of whatever opportunities you get. It was like, okay, I'm here. I can't do this. Like, I'm good at this part, right? But then I got the opportunity to start. And as soon as I had a tough outing there, I was like, well, in the pen, I always go like, there's the same thing. It was bouncing back and forth of like finding reasons why things didn't go well instead of just like embracing whatever it is and just running with it. So that was a big struggle this year of like, I get a little bit of traction. That was one of the reasons too this year in the big leagues that it didn't go, like my one game in the big leagues didn't go well is because I got called up as a starter. They didn't tell me I was going to start. So this isn't anything on the Red Sox at all. I get called up. I had been starting in AAA, throwing relatively well, especially leading up to that point. I had a few really good outings. And then I go to the big leagues. We had 2 bullpen days the day after I pitched. So I was like, oh, I'm here. I'm stretched out to 6 innings. Maybe I'll just start in Oakland. Like telling myself, like, there's no reason why I would come out of the pen today. Like the phone rings, it's me. I'm not prepared at all to pitch. I was just like, figured like I was just going to be there. Right. And then while it's happening, while the game is not going well, I'm telling myself, well, I should have been starting tomorrow anyway. I shouldn't even be in it. Like, it was just like telling myself, okay, this is why it's not going well. So whatever. Instead of just like, hey, you're here, your cleats are on, you're in uniform, be ready to get the ball whenever they call. That's not how I handled it at all. And I ended up throwing like crap, so I made it hard on myself this year, going back and forth to both.
Is that I'm going to get to, I want to follow up on that. But there is one thing that has been a reoccurring theme on this podcast. We've had a lot of the guys that were in Worcester come on previously before you, and guys ranging from your throwing partner Broadway to Chase Sugar to Stephen Scott. Just the names go down the list of that whole clubhouse pretty much, and a lot of them said the same thing in regards to having the ability to be around a guy like you, Greg Allen, Nico Goodrum, like the way that you guys set that locker room from the start of the year and let some of those younger guys kind of come into themselves. Like, I don't think you understand like how big that was for a lot of the guys that were in there. But my question would be like, how did you embrace, I guess, being like the guy, like the veteran guy that a lot of the guys in the room were like, okay, I'm going to look at Jake Faria for like either answers or like how to conduct myself?
I think just like having been through every other than Major League free agency, I've been through every single thing in baseball that you can go through. And my biggest thing was I had guys, when I look back, I had guys like that in the clubhouse when I was first in AAA. Like 2016, I had Dana Eveland, who like been around the league for a long time, been on a lot of different teams. Same, had been through every single transaction, had been a really big guy in the big leagues, and then had been a non-roster invite who made the team out of spring. Like, he'd been through everything, and we were actually locker neighbors in AAA in 2016. And he was a guy that like I could go to for anything, and never made me feel bad about any question that I had. No question was a bad question. And that helped me prepare for the year, like the time that I was in the big leagues. 2017 spring training, Tommy, we'll go back to Tommy. He was my locker neighbor in spring training. And it was the same thing of like, he would talk about like when he was a rookie, this is how things were. And this is where they saw changes needed to be made. And he was a part of making those changes. And so I had those guys around me when I was coming up, and it made my life easier once I actually got to the big leagues. And a really old school way is like, let guys go through it on their own. Like, let them get there and just walk through fire on their own and see how they come out. And I'm not a huge proponent of like, hey, come up and just, you're a rookie, you run the clubhouse. Like, I'm not a huge proponent of that. Like, you got to earn your stripes, you got to like stuff like that. But I'm also not a huge proponent of making it to where they can't come in and perform either, right? Like, I don't want to see guys come in and they have a ton of promise, but because there's a certain culture in a clubhouse, they can't be themselves to a certain extent, and then they don't perform. So it's like, I want to make it easy enough for them to go up, do certain things that they are expected to do as a rookie, but also be able to be themselves so that they can do well and they can stick. So it's like, I want to help guys get to that point before they get to the big leagues, so when they get there, it's that much easier for them.
Yeah, because I wasn't surprised, but it was, I guess, a little eye-opening because I know that and I've talked to you and I've talked to Taylor just about like you showing him pitch scripts and all that stuff. Like, I understand like your impact on him, but then when I heard it from guys that maybe didn't even, well, I'm not gonna say they didn't talk to you, but it's like they didn't really have like like when Nick Sogard goes out of his way and says, yeah, like having guys like Faria and Palka and guys that had the MLB experience like that meant a ton to that locker room, like just with some of the younger guys having somebody to look up to. So I guess I didn't fully realize the entire locker room impact until I heard it a few times and been like, oh, like, you weren't showing Nick Sogard pitch grips, you know what I'm saying? Like, the
good thing about that clubhouse too is that I've been in clubhouses where the pitchers are on one side and the hitters on the other side, right? Like, not even with how the locker room is set up, but like, they just don't, like, you just don't mingle. Like, position players and pitchers just didn't mingle really. And this year it wasn't like that. Like, the whole team hung out away from the field. We all, like, everybody got along really, really well. Like, I mean, you saw, like, we played ping pong. Everybody's playing against each other, whether you're really good or you're really bad. Like, it was, sorry, my wife's getting water.
It's okay.
It was just a really, really tight knit group that, like when I got let go, I even told my wife, I said, look, like, I understand I'm getting let go because there's a lot of factors. I'm not throwing, like, my numbers aren't amazing. They're bringing in younger guys. They trade for guys. So I was upset to get let go, but more so because, like, I genuinely enjoyed being around that group, from the players to the trainers to the coaching staff. Like, I really enjoyed being in that clubhouse. So, like, it made being an older guy, and it made it that much easier to just go out and just do those things like Sogi and all those guys are saying, like, just be that older guy. They're very open to hearing what we have to say. And so that clubhouse made it really easy to do those things.
I want to know your experience under, how was your experience with Paul Abbott?
I love Abby. It's funny because in spring training, he gravitated to me in spring training just because we had a similar path. We both got to the big leagues really, really young. Then we'd had a couple of years in the middle where things didn't go great. He had I think he said he had like 5 years where he did not pitch in the big leagues at all. And then he, was healthy, and then he pitched the next 7 years in the big leagues. Like, we had we kind of built a relationship in spring training, and then early in the season, because of my experience the year before of like a team trying to get me to do something new that I didn't necessarily want to try, but tried it anyway, and then it backfired on me, I was super hesitant to try anything new, whether it was a new bullpen routine or a new grip. And me and Abby, like, we worked through, like, we kind of just like worked through that, chiseled through that, and we ended up having a really good relationship, you know, by the time I got let go.
And I have to ask because me and Chris just went to this celebration a couple weeks ago, but have you ever seen a guy that a whole city, like a minor league baseball city, gravitate to like they did for Ryan Fitzgerald?
No, not at all. You know, and I played in Durham, where like Durham is a huge minor league baseball city. You know, St. Paul, where like you had like St. Paul, like you would think that they would be huge into certain players or whatever. I've never seen a minor league city rally around a guy like they did with Fitzy this year. Like the last, like, and I know in previous years too, like his time in Worcester is insane, like insane to see, just because like having been around baseball as long as I've been around it, like I've never seen that before. So it's really like, it's pretty cool. You know, he had his own merch and everything. It was pretty wild.
And he got a key to the city. They even had a going away like party a couple weeks ago. I mean, he's been on the Royals since the Rule 5 draft, and he was still in Worcester, and they were like, you know, they had like a Q&A with like season ticket holders. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen this.
Me and my wife saw it, and we were like, he's with the Royals. I don't know if he should be wearing his Worcester jersey. Like, but it was really cool. Like, you know, Fitzy's a good dude, and he's a charismatic guy, and you know, I know that he genuinely like cared for the fans and for the people in Worcester and for Red Sox fans in general. Like, you know, so it was really cool to see.
Jake, I have a speed run of questions here that's probably going to go a little over 5 minutes, even though I call it a speed run, but it just gets out of hand sometimes. They're just very random, non-baseball.
Okay.
If you're ready for it.
All right.
Let's start this thing out. Chris, you can start the timer. I don't care about this one.
You're 4 seconds.
All right. Movies, shows, or live TV?
Shows.
Best game you've ever played in?
Like baseball, like.
Yeah, most memorable game you've ever been a part of, like professional, college, high school, like I don't care what level it is.
Probably 20. It's close, but probably 2018. I went 8 shutout against Detroit. In Detroit.
Oh, okay. Now this question here. What song, if you had a walkout song for 2024, what would it be?
I don't know. I'm thinking about just going. I've changed it up so many times over the years. I'm just thinking about going back to my original. It's a Metallica. Sad but true. I'm Metallica.
Okay. We're getting a lot of that genre, Chris, I think, when we ask that question, which I like.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to modify this because, you know, you're an old vet now, but you're only a year older than me. But by the age of 35, you want to have accomplished what?
I would like to be a dad by then. I'd love to have at least one by then. That's the biggest one. There's like nothing else in the world that I'd rather do. I don't care about how baseball shakes out. I'd love to just by then have, you know, start growing a family.
If there was one rule in the MLB or the minors that you could change, what would it be?
Pitch clock. Get rid of it. Can't stand it.
It's our second in a row on that one.
Yep.
Who was the last one?
Nick Mears with Colorado.
Yeah, I want that. I want it gone.
It's actually kind of funny because he says, guys, I got to run 300 feet to the mound from right field in elevation out in Denver. I'm gassed when I get there. Then the clock's already ticking. It's like, I need to catch my breath, and the clock's
2019, I ran in from the bullpen with the Brewers in Colorado, and I had to bend over on my knees and catch my breath. Like, It was horrible. Like it takes some getting used to.
Yeah. So he said maybe in Colorado we should, tick it up a little bit just for that. But all right.
Yeah.
Favorite athlete outside of baseball?
Favorite athlete outside of baseball? Kobe Bryant.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, he reigns king in this house.
Okay.
My wife's a lifelong Lakers fan.
Oh, that helps too. All right. You said you're a show guy. I need your favorite TV show of all time.
The Office. Even though
Classic.
we just ran through George Lopez last week, but The Office.
Why George Lopez?
And we were on Peacock, and we were just like, oh, George Lopez is on Peacock, so we just ran through it. And it's like, especially because my wife is Mexican and I'm half Cuban, so it's just funny. Like that's their dynamic. So like it's just funny to watch it from from the couch. It's pretty funny.
We're in that same age group because you're only a year older than me. And when I would always remember you would watch when we were young, probably like 5th, 6th grade maybe, and you had like Nickelodeon on or something, and then you would fall asleep and you would wake up and you'd
you see them jumping up and down on the screen. Yeah.
I don't know why. I always remember that because I fell asleep and then you would wake up and like your 6th grade.
That was your alarm clock at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it was. Weirdest baseball superstition that you have or you've seen in person?
I don't know if it's necessarily a superstition, or if it just became a habit. But I played with a guy named Ray Black, who was with the Giants for a long time. I played with him in Milwaukee, and every time he would get called up in the pen, he would take Red Hot, like the rub it on his elbow, rub it on his shoulder, and then he would take the excess and rub it into his beard and then stuff it up his nose. Like,
Damn.
That dude was a savage. And I love the guy to death, but he's like, it was like we had one game in Milwaukee, the phone rang for him 3 times. So it was like 3 times he loaded up on Red Hot on the shoulder, the elbow, the shoulder, the face, and the nose. It was like, dude, he's like, yeah, I can't smell anything. Like, it's gone. Like, I can't smell anything anymore. So
that guy could not sniff
craziest.
anything these days.
No, he's not smelling a thing.
All right, this one might be tough for you because you've played in a few spots. You've played with a lot of teammates, but you got to try. So, who is the one player that you've played with or against that's left you thinking like, holy shit, that guy is the best I've ever seen?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's tough. You played with a lot of good players.
Best I've ever seen. Wow. Honestly, like probably Trey Turner. I witnessed him in 2014. We were in low A, and he had just got drafted, went straight to Fort Wayne with the Padres. He almost beat out a ground ball to the pitcher. Like, wow. And I was charging on home plate, and I can't remember who was throwing, but it was and it was a hard chopper. It was like hit hard back to the pitcher. And I'm like, oh, cool, easy, mark it down 1-3. And I look up, and he's like, it was like that at first base. It was like, dude. And then just playing against him and watching him over the years, it's like, I don't know if there is a more toolsy player in the big leagues. Like, and that's not a knock or anything, because there are guys that are toolsy that just can't put it together. This dude he's fast. He's got range in the infield. He's got crazy pop at the plate. Like, I've heard he's just a genuinely great guy to be around. Like, that's probably my pick.
Nobody's going to argue with you about that pick. I mean, he's incredible to watch. I need a guilty pleasure of Jake Faria.
Guilty pleasure. Oh no. I am literally that meme of like the boyfriend or husband that like criticizes the show my wife watches, and then I'm super invested. Like, our show is Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah, I've watched it with the fiance.
Heard it, seen it. I used to sit there and be like, why are you watching these waiters and bartenders fight on TV? And then I'm like, when is the season opening? Like, I'm so invested. So that's probably my guilty pleasure.
That one hits home, man. That's my fiance is always watching something out there, and I'll be like, "Why are you watching this? This show's dumb." As I sit on this side of the couch and I'm started watching like 20 minutes.
I'm like, why would he do that? Like, I'm like super invested. Like we had we've been to dinner at Sir, the restaurant from that show. Like,
yeah,
we've been to dinner there a bunch. We had our engagement dinner there. Like my wife celebrated her 21st birthday. We see people from the show in the restaurant or like losing it. Like that's probably my guilty pleasure.
Oh man, that one hits home. I'm gonna make sure the fiance does not hear that because I'm like, oh, man, I'm guilty of it. She like calls me out on it too, and she's like, why are you criticizing it? You're invested now. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah,
like, teetering that line, but all right.
Right.
This one's an important one, Jake. I need your favorite fast food fried chicken chain.
Raising Cane's. I love Chick-fil-A. Don't get me wrong. But a good like box combo from Raising Cane's, and like if I am feeling a sandwich, I just get extra Texas toast and I just make a sandwich out of it. Like that's probably my favorite.
Can I interest you in Zaxby's?
I've had Zaxby's before.
Okay.
The toughest thing about Zaxby's is we don't have it out here. Raising Cane's, you can get Raising Cane's everywhere. I'm pretty sure everywhere. Like I had it last year in Worcester, and we're just outside of Worcester, but like you're able to go anywhere and get it. Zaxby's is just harder to get to.
Yeah,
but I
feel you.
I say that In-N-Out's my favorite burger. You can only get it on the West Coast and then in Texas. So I don't know. But Raising Cane's is my favorite.
All right, while we're on the chicken kick here, are you a drums or flat guy?
Flats. They rip one bone out and it just comes off easy.
Okay. What's your go-to pregame snack?
This year was the Uncrustables. This last season, we had a double header one day. I had 3 Uncrustables in the first game, and then I pitched, and then the next game I had 4. So I had 7. I had 7 or 8 Uncrustables in one day. It got to a point where it became a thing in the clubhouse. It was if people saw me without one in my hand, something was wrong. I crushed them. It was really, really bad.
Who was the other player, Andrew, that said that too? They said the Uncrustables. Who was the other player?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it was pretty positive. It was some of the Red Sox too. I can't remember.
Couldn't tell you. The nutritionist probably didn't like you though for that, but
she would see me eating them. She's like, "Let's try to find a healthier alternative." I'm like, "No, I'm okay. I'll put healthy food around the Uncrustables, but I'm still going to eat Uncrustables."
So actually, while we're on the food kick, you've been in a handful of clubhouses. How would you rate the food that the Red Sox provided to you guys in the clubhouse pre and post to other markets you've been in?
On the minor league side or just overall?
On the minor league side.
Okay. Because there's some big league spreads that not good. But it was pretty good. The snack selection was good. The actual the pre and post game food is pretty good. It was more than edible, so it was good.
I'm assuming you've heard some.
Having been around when the clubhouse standards did not exist. It was a free for all. It was pretty good. Worcester's pretty good.
Okay, fair. I had one last food related one on the speed run here. What's the worst topping to put on a pizza?
I mean, I don't eat anchovies at all. I've tried it once and I cannot do it. A lot of people love to hate on pineapple on pizza. I don't eat pineapple on pizza, but I don't I don't not like it. Probably anchovies. I can't stand anchovies on pizza.
It's the second episode in a row. Nick Mears did the same thing, and Chris was like, "Never had one before." He's like, "Have you ever just poured a bunch of salt on your tongue and just like,
Yeah,
I don't know, just like experience that?"
Oh,
So-
I have
literally like take a swig of some ocean, like some seawater, and that's it. Like that's pretty much what you're eating.
hard pass.
Chris, follow-ups on the speed run.
I was going to ask about the shows, but you kind of hit that. Is there anything now that you guys are done with? You could say George Lopez, but is there anything else that you guys are that you're into right now, or there's like one go-to show? Like I was telling Nick Mears yesterday, like I'm a big Seinfeld Curb Your Enthusiasm guy, so like Curb just started. I'm pumped about that. So I've been just binging that nonstop. But is there anything right now that you guys are going to jump into show-wise?
I wouldn't say anything that we're gonna like. I like rotate. Like I'll watch a whole series, and then when that's over, I'll go to the next one. So like, I've watched The Office. Like if I start one show, I don't watch anything else until that show is done.
I'm the same way.
I haven't watched Office in a while because I've watched it like 10 or 11 times. Like I can't watch it. Like I start reciting lines, and it's just like I'm laughing in my head before the thing even happens on TV. Modern Family is a big one. I've watched all 11 seasons. I think they had 11 seasons. So like I started that one again recently. After we finished George Lopez, I started Modern Family again. So it's really just like whenever I finish a show, I just scroll through and like, oh yeah, like let's watch that one again. And then whatever like my guilty like Vanderpump Rules, like every week we'll watch the new episode of that. But like for the most part, I don't really have like a lot of new shows that I'm into. The only show I'm looking forward to starting again is Blue Bloods. That's like one of my favorite shows. My whole family is law enforcement. So like I grew up around cops and all that. So like, and I'm a huge Tom Selleck fan. So like that's probably right there with The Office as one of my favorite